There may be more to Swift exploitation than just the Bangladesh bank heist. An active ransomware campaign is targeting older Android devices. The U.S. military, like everyone else, is concerned about third-party cyber risk. Belgium asks for more EU monitoring of social media for terrorist traffic. And the U.S. Director of National Intelligence says Snowden accelerated the advance of commercial strong encryption by at least 7 years. And that, coming from DNI Clapper, is no letter of recommendation. This podcast is sponsored by Cynet, the Security Innovation Network, connecting the cybersecurity community, innovators, investors, and customers, business and government. Learn more at security-innovation.org. I'm Dave Bittner in Baltimore with your CyberWire summary for Tuesday, April 26, 2016. Reuters, which says it's seen a confidential report Swift circulated privately to its customers yesterday, reports that the International Financial Transfer Network has warned that the Bangladesh bank cyber robbery wasn't unique in exploiting software vulnerabilities to mask fraudulent transactions. What they refer to as malicious insiders or external attackers have submitted bogus messages to the Swift network on more than one occasion, according to Reuters' account of that warning. Observers think that one lesson to draw from the robbery is the importance of watching closely what goes on inside an enterprise's perimeter. If an attacker gets in, they've become functionally indistinguishable from an insider, and they shouldn't be allowed to romp freely. So the recommendation is that enterprises should be aware of, monitor, and control what goes on inside their perimeter, look for lateral movement, privilege elevation, and so on. Blue Coat Labs reports an active ransomware campaign targeting older Android systems. The attackers are locking Android devices using Dogspectus ransomware they deliver with the Towelroot exploit kit. Towelroot delivers its payload via drive-by malicious advertising that downloads hostile JavaScript. Devices running older version 4 releases of Android are vulnerable. And since those older versions are no longer supported, the devices are likely to remain vulnerable as long as they remain in use. They're in roughly the same situation as systems running Microsoft Windows XP. Their operating system is old, unsupported, and no longer patched. The ransom demand is communicated through a truly implausible screen that purports to be from the Cyber Police of the American National Security Agency. The Cyber Police have found that all actions are illegal are fixed, whatever that may mean, and that if you don't pay your fine by the deadline, then Cyber Police will rat you out to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. So there, you offender, you. By the way, the ransom is $200, which the Cyber Police of the American National Security Agency have thoughtfully agreed to accept in the form of iTunes gift cards. In the U.S., senior military officers hint obliquely about concerns that foreign intelligence services could compromise defense supplier networks. Details beyond the public statements are understandably sensitive and being closely held, but the concerns seem similar to the third-party risk worries that are widespread among commercial enterprises. The U.S. cyber campaign against ISIS also proceeds apace. Its objectives remain first to inhibit ISIS recruiting, second to damp down jihadist inspirational propaganda, and third to interdict electronic cash transfers into the caliphate. An overarching goal is to deprive ISIS of its semblance of legitimate sovereignty by undermining lower-level extremists' sense of security. A caliph who can't protect his subjects is not much of a caliph at all. U.S. Director of National Intelligence James Clapper said yesterday at a breakfast session hosted by the Christian Science Monitor that Edward Snowden's leaks accelerated the development and widespread dissemination of commercial encryption by about 7 years. Quote, "From our standpoint, it's not a good thing," he said, making the now familiar point that encryption has been, or at least might have been, used by terrorists to secure their communications from collection by intelligence services. He went on to call ISIS the most sophisticated user by far of the Internet, and that they've secured their communications with commercially purchased encryption. Most sophisticated user by far of the Internet seems construed literally to be a stretch. More sophisticated, for example, than Google or Facebook, or for that matter Swift, or more sophisticated than Russia's FSB. But construed charitably, it does indeed seem true that ISIS has so far been unusually effective at online inspiration. In any case, DNI Clapper closed with a call for striking an appropriate balance between legitimate concerns for privacy and legitimate concerns for security. Turning to industry news, the SecureWorks IPO still shows no more than a dead cat bounce. Investors in cybersecurity are clearly looking beyond a story stock story and want to see profits and cost control. And finally, to return to the Bangladesh bank heist, the criminals behind the Foundation, as they inadvertently spelled their foundation, that received the $81 million taken from the Bangladesh bank remain unknown and presumably at large. Perhaps they'll eventually be collared with the help of alert proofreaders like those at Deutsche Bank who stopped the theft short of its $951 million goal. Happy editing, English majors. And schönen Dank, Deutsche Bank. This CyberWire podcast is brought to you by the Digital Harbor Foundation, a nonprofit that works with youth and educators to foster learning, creativity, productivity, and community through technology education. Learn more at digitalharbor.org. And joining me once again is Joe Kerrigan from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute, one of our academic and research partners. Joe, you've got a great story to share. One of your colleagues at Hopkins sort of had an inside view of a scammer recently.
That's correct. At the Information Security Institute, we have a very smart and capable network engineer by the name of Chris Venghaus. And he got a phone call one day that was somebody from Microsoft telling him that he had a virus on his computer. Now, Chris actually is an Apple user and doesn't have a Microsoft computer, so realized exactly what it was the moment he heard the person's voice on the other end describing the problem to him. Being as quick thinking as he is, he immediately went over to his ESXi machine, which is a VMware product, created a new virtual machine.
And just for our listeners, what's a virtual machine?
A virtual machine is a computer that runs in software. So what you get is shared resources, and these computers exist only in the memory of the ESXi device.
So it's a way to build a sort of a simulated computer that is self-contained and sort of insulated from the rest of the world, yes?
Correct. Or you can do whatever you want with it, actually. It's actually very powerful and an excellent way to virtualize systems.
All right, so your colleague jumps on this virtual machine. What happens next?
And he installs the screen sharing software that the guy tells him to install. The guy takes control of the machine and opens up a command prompt and says, I'm going to do a scan of your computer. And he just types a tree command, which if you run from the root directory of a drive, will list all of the directories, subdirectories, and files that are contained on that drive.
All right.
Now, while this is running, he starts typing again, and he types the words virus found in the name of some executable.
This is the bad guy typing.
This is the bad guy,
yep,
correct.
Yep.
And he hits Control-C, which effectively stops the tree command from running. And down at the bottom, there is a message that he has typed that says virus found. Now, no viruses have been found. Tree doesn't scan for viruses. It just lists the contents of your drive. And
so it made it look like there's a whole lot going on the system, even though it was completely benign.
Right. To the uninitiated, it might look scary, but to us, it was laughable.
Okay. So what happened next?
Chris actually did a very good job of keeping this guy on the phone for about 2 hours. And eventually, when it came time for Chris to enter his credit card information, Chris turned off his network connection and said, "Oh, my internet just went down." And essentially wasted 2 hours of this guy's time, preventing him from scamming somebody else.
Turnabout is fair play.
Correct.
But it's a good lesson to our listeners that this is the kind of thing you need to be careful about.
Correct. Yeah, Microsoft will never call you and say, hey, you have a virus on your machine. When you get that call, just hang up. I mean, Chris took the opportunity to play with this guy and investigate because Chris knows what he's doing and can stand up a virtual machine that he can then instantaneously destroy and have no ill effects. If someone's not an expert and doesn't know what they're doing, then they can wind up installing software on their machine that they don't want having installed. You're giving control of your machine to these people at some point in time. And if it's a disposable machine, that's fine. But if it's actually your machine, that's probably bad.
All right, words to the wise. Thanks, Joe, for joining us.
My pleasure.
And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, visit thecyberwire.com. And while you're there, subscribe to our popular daily news brief. Our editor is John Petrick. I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening.